Hello, everybody. This is Stu Smith and Jeff Nichols, and we are starting another tactical fitness report. And this is part of our series about the different body types getting ready for SEAL training or even other, special ops selection programs. Now, this timing of the day there where Jeff lives is outside of a Navy Air Station, so you're going to be hearing F-18s fly over, which, like I said, is the sound of freedom. So enjoy it.
Yep.
Enjoy it. We'll pause whenever when they're really loud. But anyway, that's the cool thing about living next to an air base. So this we're going to talk about the swimming athlete who, let's say, has been a competitive swimmer all his life.
We could even say water polo too, right?
Yeah,
Probably.
water polo guy too.
Yep.
And we're going to go through, high school, maybe even college competitive swimmer, and now he's trying to get ready for buds. He's done with his competitive swimming program. What are the things he needs? Well, let's start off with his strengths, obvious strengths. What are the strengths he brings to the table, when he goes to SEAL training?
Yeah, I think probably if you've done competitive swimming for any length of time, let's say probably at least 2 or 3 years, or if there hasn't been, like, let's say you swam competitive at age 5, 6, and 7, you may not have retained that sort of what I'm going to call comfort.
Yeah.
That's the biggest thing we've got to achieve by putting miles in, literally in a pool over time, is you just get really comfortable with it. And I think that's the biggest strength. Now, I swam competitively my whole life, almost my entire youth life, and I will say that there is a big difference. Had done before buds. I had done a bunch of open water swimming in lakes, doing sprint triathlons and stuff. But the ocean is a different animal. It really is an interesting animal. But there is some value swimming in a big open lake and having to spot.
Oh yeah.
But for me, the obvious strength is what I just call water competence.
That's probably the number one strength they bring. However, very similar to the running athlete, they are in their head, when you're doing hours looking at that black line, swimming and swimming and swimming, for a long period of time in a swim practice, you have to entertain yourself, you have to endure the pain of swimming, for long periods of time. And sometimes that monotony can really help you build that dissociative skill. And like I said, I'm not calling it like a dissociative disorder. This is just a dissociation skill of where you just go to your happy place when times are tough and it kind of sucks. And you don't really have to think. You just have to kind of find another way to endure the pain. And sometimes that little happy place will allow you to do that, building up that skill.
And I agree with that even more so than running, because running, there's a lot more visual to take in.
Yeah, right.
Swimming, that black line. So interesting. The best way you can change stuff up in swimming, and I've done this before, is we would turn the lights off and we'd drop chem lights in the water.
Right.
Or some pools now can put music into the pools. Some pools now you can buy the earbuds for swimming. Like it's very difficult to change up that visual. Like I've seen stuff where people put vinyl scenery down, something a little more serene, like green landscape, like backdrops. I've seen that before in pools. I've been one of the best aquatic centers on the planet is the Australian. There's 2 at AIS. One is kind of the casual pool. One is the high speed. It doesn't even look like a pool. It's pretty impressive.
Wow.
And some of the things they do in there are pretty cool. So swimming can be just like, driving in the desert at night and you just see lines going by. And I've done that in Arizona. It can be a little bit like droning on, if you will.
Right. Yeah. So I mean, inside their own head, I would call that a form of mental toughness, that they have that ability to do that. Let's think of some of the other strengths in line with, the elements of fitness. So endurance.
Yeah, that aerobic capacity is good.
Yeah, that's really good. Muscle stamina.
Yeah.
Even now, One of their weaknesses, very similar to the running athlete, would be strength.
Yeah.
Right? Vertically loaded strength.
Exactly.
Right?
A lot of people would think that swimmers would be good at doing pull-ups. And that doesn't necessarily transfer for the exact reason that Stu had mentioned, because in water, certainly gravity is relevant. It's still, the math is still there to some degree, but when you're not compressing the spine vertically, the musculature, for the same reason when you go in outer space, right, there is very specific exercise equipment that exists on the shuttle as well as the space station, because that stress that gravity, the positive stress that gravity has on us, on our bones, tendons and ligaments, you've kind of removed that to some degree in the pool.
Oh yeah, absolutely. That's why when those guys get off of the space shuttle, they're in wheelchairs for a little bit, because they're like,
Yep.
Holy crap, what is this?
Gravity thing, yeah.
You know? But anyway, that's almost to a degree what the swimmer feels like when he tries to run for the first time.
Yep.
And so like we did with the endurance cross-country runner, where we said, okay, you run 70 miles a week. Let's don't do that. Let's drop it down to 20, 25 if that's a good number for you. But let's add swimming to your cardio time. So instead of, running 10 miles, you're going to run for 5 and then swim for half an hour or whatever, right? So whereas with the swimmer, you can't say just go run, because the swimmer are really susceptible to the lower extremity injuries from your feet, your shins, your knees, stress fractures, even in the hips, all of those things. If you're not used to running, and you try to run as a swimmer, I can't tell you how many times I've seen swimmers, whether it was plebe summer at the Naval Academy or at Buds, just constantly injured or nursing injuries to stay in training.
Yeah, and also overhead pressing can be a real struggle, because that overhead press act in the pool, and it sounds crazy, but injuries in swimming a lot of times happen to going into the wall.
Oh yeah.
That it's just like, because that compression, that compressive force of the shoulder girdle is a rarity in swimming aside from finishing, which is also one of the reasons it's faster not by happenstance, but it's also faster to finish the wall on your side, which is why you see them rotate to their side, okay, when they finish. And it's also healthier for the shoulder. So that's why a lot of times you see them finish on their side. But so that's one of those things to take in consideration, that we don't, if you've not been a swimmer for years or coached or taught or whatever, we just kind of think it is just, we don't really think about those aspects. And these are the aspects that we want to help you guys think about, because you as a swimmer might even go, well, heck, like I'm in really darn good shape. Why can't I run? I should have a really strong back. Why can't I do pull-ups? Well, the water changes that.
Right. And yeah, and it's gravity. I mean, not that you're not susceptible to gravity, obviously, in water, but it's decreasing. So let's talk about, I would say the number one thing that I do with swimmers. Well, actually, I do two things with swimmers. I start getting them. I mean, they're pretty good with calisthenics off the start, with their high repetition, especially upper body work, even though they're not killing the pull-ups yet, but they're usually pretty good with the core and the push-ups, depending on their body type as well. A lot of swimmers are very long, if they're 6'4" with a wingspan of 6'7",
7 foot or something.
I mean, that's another element, but they tend to have a pretty good calisthenics base. So I'll probably will mix in, into their calisthenics training, some weight bearing exercises. And it starts off real gently, just like with farmer walks or goblet squats. And then, just, upper overhead presses with dumbbells, and then that's really it for the first cycle. And then maybe in a heavier lifting cycle when we're trying to build some muscle mass, trying to build some real strength. Then we get into some of the different leg exercises when you're talking about squats, and maybe even put them on a leg press machine first, and then go into squats, and then go into deadlifts, and kind of progress like that. But the other progression is running as well, because, you know, with both of these activities, even though they're two different things, the one common place is gravity that the swimmer is not used to as much. So we got to get them running progressively. That means maybe, you know, a mile a day max for, you know, a few weeks, and then build up to a mile and a half, and, you know, just kind of progress that way in a nice steady percentage. So, you know, we can ward off some of those overuse injuries that are so common with swimmers.
Yeah. And so and also too, one of the big pros that's right in line with an endurance runner swimmers, the similarity is that swimmers take to resistance training really, really fast.
Yeah.
So that's the other side too, is like, this isn't doom and gloom, folks. This is, I've got this real, and that's what we're saying, a really good aerobic base will lend itself to building a really good anaerobic base much faster than someone that has and we'll get into this tomorrow, next time, is someone has a very, very strong anaerobic base trying to get a better aerobic base.
Yes.
It's much quicker transition. And Stu hit it right on, is we want to get these swimmers. And that's, so the genesis of land-based training for swimming was primarily for two things: to get off the blocks quicker and to get out of the turn faster. Because that's about the only time you're going to get into deep hip flexion in swimming.
Yeah.
Because if you look at all the strokes, it's glute and hamstring and hip flexor based. In some quad, upper quad, I guess, it's all quad, but you don't experience that deep hip flexion. Look on the blocks. Look in that deep tuck coming off. Right before you begin your push off the wall, you're in a deep tuck, right? Hips, knees to chest almost.
Yeah, especially on the flip turns.
Absolutely.
Yep.
And for a lot of swimmers that tend to be a little bit taller, that poses a really difficult biomechanic force load if they've never experienced it outside of the pool. And we're not saying, just to be clear, we're not saying lift heavy. So that's where, like, you see like a track squat machine that's called a Smith machine.
Oh yeah.
You can see them right in a lightweight position doing jump squats, or you see it's basically looks almost like a Pilates table, I guess, but it's a hack squat machine. It's a plyo machine where, you know, you lay in it and it's got these big padded shoulders,
right.
And it's got bungees that change the tension. They're jumping, bam, deep jump squats.
Yeah.
You can see it in a hack squat. I'm a big fan of you know, back squatting and front squatting. But I'm also even a better fan of belt squat machines for swimmers, because we want to be dynamic and build that base of strength too. So, and in perfect, like the walking lunges, the farmer carries, all that. It's because what swimmers don't typically get, they don't have to manage load. Like carrying a ruck, for example. But what a great way to load the spine is load carriage, farmer's carries, pushing sleds, all those sort of things that just makes them a more diverse athlete.
Yeah. Yeah. And that transition, like you said, is pretty quick. Mm-hmm. I mean, if they did a cycle of a 12-week lift cycle, which we had a collegiate swimmer and a collegiate cross country guy join us in the summer, where we're typically, and the swimmer had already done some running, so he was already transitioned into a pretty progressive running program. So we progressed with running and high rep calisthenics all through the summer, and they both got great at calisthenics and they were good at running. And then we went into our lift cycle, and both of them just exploded with weight gain. I mean, probably I think they both hit about 10, maybe even 15 pounds on one of them, you know, before. And it was perfect timing, because that's when the guy went to SOAS and, you know, the officer program. And, did real well there under the boats, under the logs, all the type of things that he was worried about, 6 months prior, but yeah, a 12-week cycle with some pure lifting and, some swimming technique training with some running technique training, maybe some speed work in there. I mean, that is a perfect cycle for the endurance athlete, getting ready to go.
Yeah. And speaking directly about swimmers and swimming, and, you put 10 pounds of lean mass on a swimmer, the likelihood of that additional weight being a negative in water is minuscule. I mean, it's probably incalculable. You put 10, 15 pounds on a runner, it's going to change the runner a little bit.
Yep.
It may even make them better, honestly, if they're light, like 130 pounds.
Yeah, especially on their back end kick. Yeah.
If you take a swimmer that's 170 pounds and turn them into a swimmer that's 190 pounds and they're 6'4", because I've seen that. Holy mackerel.
Yeah. Pull harder, kick harder, off the walls harder.
It's scary. Look at the body types of Michael Phelps from age 16 till 24.
Yeah. Yeah, he blew up.
Just crazy. But again, that goes to, age and maturity and certain other things too. But that's also one of the reasons why Stu and I keep saying, hey, if you're 18, wait till you're 19 or 20.
Yeah.
And I know people are impatient. It's like, well, it's easier said than done, Jeff, because you and Stu both went through college. And yep, it is. It is easier said than done, I suppose. But there's some value in that.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't even know about SEAL training specifically for myself until I was 20 years old. I mean, I went to the Naval Academy to become a pilot. Top Gun was out in the 80s, and that was the coolest thing ever. I was like, oh, I'm all over this.
Yeah.
Be a fighter pilot. Yeah.
But little did you know that the Navy doesn't let you pick your call sign.
Well, yeah, that is true.
The Air Force does, but the Navy doesn't. Yeah.
Exactly.
But no, it's crazy. Top Gun 2 is coming out.
I heard.
Same cast. Aside from
fun.
One of the cast members is dead, but anyways, I think
Goose is dead.
Well, Iceman's got to drop speaking of dropping some weight, Val Kilmer's got to drop 60 pounds for the role. He got big. Anyways, swimming. That's again, we just want to give you guys the roadmap. So we talked, hey, the pros, some of the hurdles that they're going to have to overcome, those sort of things, and then we kind of touched on mindset, but there again, I think one of the things that it also coincides with what we talked about runners is, we want to draw back some of that mileage. We in swimming want to do the same thing. Want to draw back some of that mileage, and I guess it's going to vary a little bit. If let's say we capture a college sophomore who's a swimmer, we can only vary that training so much because they're going to be swimming almost year round in college.
Yeah.
But if they're swimming at a college, a fairly decent sized college or university, there is going to be some off-season training that will likely include resistance training. Now, if you're at Arizona, Stanford, Michigan, some of the top end, Texas, Florida, some of the best swimming schools in the country, you are going to have a robust amount of time outside of the pool doing resistance training.
Yeah, you could actually pre-train for buds with that alone.
That alone, yeah.
I mean, because you're going to have world-class trainers there working with you to get you stronger. You can top it off with a little bit of running just so you have that little bit of a base, and you could be a better student. Yep. Now, I will say this. We had a couple, big-time collegiate swimmers in our buds class, water polo players too, that they could crush everything in the water. On land, the one guy was his nickname was, and he was an OCS guy, funny guy, but they used to call him Comnav Goon Squad because he was constantly
awesome.
He was constantly in the Goon Squad every run. I mean, he just sucked at running, and he hurt so bad, but he made it through. And I mean, I think he made it through Hell Week with 2 broken legs, stress fractures. I mean, just it took him like a year and a half to get through buds, just with all his leg injuries. But they liked him. He's a good officer.
Just a good dude. Yeah, and that's I guess that's a lesson all of itself. Maybe we do a topic on like, you can struggle at some things in buds, and you will. Yeah. I wouldn't say that there's anything like I wasn't a great runner, but my very first run in first phase was 29 minutes. So I was kind of like, ooh, I'll play that game all day.
Yeah.
But I wasn't a great runner by any stretch.
Me either.
So just know that, like, there is a bit of sacrifice. Obviously, if you're a great runner, there's a sacrifice. If you're a great swimmer, you're going to have to make that sacrifice. And the sooner that you go, all right, I don't need to be swimming all the time. I really need to work on my weaknesses.
Yes.
And that's really the point of all this is we just need to get you guys to go, hey, because if you're a world-class swimmer or a really good swimmer for that matter, the swimming isn't going to be much of an issue. It's going to be cold and it's going to be tiring, but rely on you that you're not going to lose that. That's the beauty. Yeah. If you're a great runner, folks, and I mean, if you're a good runner, you can put on 50 pounds and you're still going to be a good runner. I say 50.
Well above the standard.
The standard. And that's the thing with swimming is, and the same with like, if you're a strength athlete, but that's why we're choosing that 1/3.
Yeah.
Stu and I talk a lot about resistance training, and I certainly do a lot because that's what I see that's the strength side is most oftenly mitigated or like, hey, I'm just going to muscle my way through buds. And that certainly isn't going to work either, which is why we're saving that one kind of for the end. Yeah. But actually, I won't mention his name, but his dad is a SEAL, former SEAL. His son is going to rescue swimmer school, Coast Guard. That's serious. That's down here in North Carolina.
That's a tough one too.
That is a beautiful facility, and I know the staff there. Such good dudes. And he swam competitively his whole life. The kid did, and I was like trying to get him to run. It's been a while in correspondence, and finally coming around. That's one of those things where it wasn't even almost. So here's my point, and I think maybe this is the point we're trying to make, and we haven't yet. Is we have a swimmer that's really good. They take to resistance training really well because we need to get them running more. That's the point we're trying to make, I guess. We haven't made that point is that the best way for a swimmer, one of the best ways, the most optimal ways to get a swimmer to get to running, because that's what we're trying to get that person to do, is through resistance training. That is how we acclimate them to the ground forces necessary to run better.
Yes.
They already have that great aerobic base, so let's get them into bands and body weight and suspension trainers and walking lunges and then all of a sudden you're going to see that they're able to manage those feet hitting the ground that they've never really had to do, which is why that's not the issue typically with a triathlete. That's a whole other thing, is that triathletes can run well typically and swim well. They're just not very strong.
Right.
So then it's like, okay, which one do I balance? And maybe that's a topic he and I will talk about.
That's a good one.
But so that's I guess the point I'm trying to make is that resistance training, if there were ever a case for an athlete to do resistance training for buds, it would most certainly be the swimmer.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Not that runners don't need it too, but they're acclimated to the ground force.
Yeah.
Because typically runners don't have quote unquote weak legs. They don't. They struggle with some upper body work.
Yes.
Swimmers struggle with both typically. Yes. Upper body strength and lower body strength, and even lower body loaded endurance running.
Yeah.
So swimmers are the case. That's where I make the case for resistance training is so very valuable.
Absolutely.
Valuable.
Absolutely. And remember, resistance training is defined as calisthenics, bands, suspension training, dumbbells, kettlebells, barbells, machines, all of those things. So when we say resistance training, we don't just mean, deadlift, squats, and bench press.
No.
There's so many other ways to build that type of strength and resistance foundation. So
it's resistance beyond what gravity is already putting on. 9.8 meters per second squared is gravity. That's a certain force meter based off of your body weight. Whatever that force is, your foot hitting the ground based off of gravity pushing down on you. Anything beyond that is considered resistance training.
Right. There you go.
If you change that angle, that's why suspension training, resistance training, because you change that angle of force under the spine. If I'm leaning back doing rows, it's resistance training. Yeah. So that's why we want you guys to think that you guys hopefully are starting to realize that your toolbox is almost infinite with resistance training, which is why we keep saying, yes, you should do strength training. You should do forms of high intensity interval training, i.e. CrossFit or whatever it is. You should do them all.
Yeah.
All of them.
Hey, one thing too, I'm not really calling this a weakness, but I remember we had some really good swimmers get to dive phase and not do that well in dive phase, whether it was pool comp or it was some other event, in dive phase, that it's a different world. Yep. For the swimmer too. So I don't think they necessarily have an advantage is what I'm trying to say when it comes to dive phase.
I would agree.
I personally been scuba diving since I was 12 years old. Having a regulator in my mouth was nothing new to me. I think having a PADI scuba course under your belt before going to BUD/S is never a bad idea.
Yeah, for that familiarization, for sure.
Just for that familiarization. Because, I mean, for me, I remember there were guys that were, first time ever a regulator in their mouth was, on the grinder, in second phase,
that was me.
Testing out.
Is this thing really going to work? I mean, I've been in snorkels and stuff like that before, but I don't think I'd ever breathe through a regulator.
Yeah. And then you get through some pretty challenging events under there, with instructors, shutting down your air source and doing all that through pool comp. Yep. So anyway, I remember seeing one of our world-class water polo players get rolled for pool comp, in my class. And I was thinking, wow, I thought he would kick all our asses, because he kicked all our asses and everything else. He was just such a stud. Yeah. But then he got rolled for pool comp, and I was, it was an equalizer.
We had a guy that was a dive instructor in Hawaii for years. He played football in Nebraska. He was a tight end, national champion tight end in Nebraska. Graduated from Nebraska. He got his degree in like finance or something, made some money. He moved to Hawaii. He was a dive instructor for years at Red Sail, which is the world's largest diving company, right? They're all over. He failed pool comp.
Wow.
He ended up making it through BUD/S, a class later, whatever. But so that's the other side is like, if you're going to do, that's why Stu and I mentioned familiarization. If you're going to do a dive course, just go, don't think you're doing, because the way that they do it in BUD/S is, or Navy dive school for that matter, or Army dive school is such perfect instruction given what it's such, so that's the other side of it. And I always say, like, when we say swimmers don't do very well in diving, I totally agree. I look at it the exact same way as wrestlers, folk style and freestyle wrestlers don't take to jiu-jitsu very well because they don't like being on their back. Yeah. They've always told being on their back is bad.
Yeah.
Whereas Brazilian jiu-jitsu do really well transferring into like folk style type wrestling or freestyle.
Right. Yeah, sure.
They're good with it. But then they end up on their back and pin themselves too much sometimes. But it's one of those things where it's a trade-off. Yeah. And which is why, again, we're saying be well-rounded, folks. Experience everything you can. Do rock climbing. Go do a diving course in college, right? That's the other side is for you college athletes, you can, because most semesters you have, or once a year, you typically have to pick some sort of physical education course. Diving for most universities is offered as a college course.
Yeah.
It was at Troy University, and it was done in the pool. It wasn't even in a recreational like lake or nothing.
Yep. Yep. Like I said, it's a familiarization course that I think, it's not needed, obviously, but it's one thing that if you're worried about it, it might help you relieve some of that anxiety.
Is swimming a club sport at the academy, or is it a competitive NCAA sport?
It's NCAA.
Okay. Yeah. I imagine that it would be.
Yeah, they do have an intramural swim program too that you can swim.
Because I don't think I've been to the aquatic center there.
Well, I'll show you.
Yeah, I've been looking forward to for sure. I know I've been in where they wrestle. I've been in the big
it's the same building.
And I've been in the university. I've been in the football weight room at the academy.
Yeah.
But other than that, I don't think I've been anywhere else.
Yeah, you'll like it.
But, yeah, it's awesome. So
All right, so let's close this one up with mental toughness. Right? They typically have a good. They're good in their own heads, as you mentioned, like as with the runner. Definitely, I tell you what, waking up early every day and jumping into a cold, pool of water, that is a gradual way of building mental toughness for life. I will tell you what, that is hard. Some of these kids that work out with us are finishing when we're pulling in there about 10 minutes till 6, and they're walking out, and they've been there for an hour and a half. Sometimes it's just like, holy crap.
Yeah, that was that's an F-18 right there.
Yeah.
That was. I've never, and to this day, I can get up early, like not an issue, but I'm like I'm not a very high functioning individual except in water. And that was because the 15 years of waking up before in Iowa where it's minus 15 degrees, driving across the state to a swim meet or a swim lesson or whatever for years. Maybe that had something to do with
absolutely.
I get up, I know I'm going to get wet, and it's just like, God. All right, it's just got to happen, and you just get in the water and you just don't think about it. But every single day, though, like I know, like I can say this with absolute certainty. Every time I got up that morning for swim lessons or swim practice, rather, or a swim meet, I'd stand there before I got into the water for the warm-up. I just go,
yes.
Every time I remember that vividly, just going, there's got to be something. I remember once rubbing Vaseline on myself just to see if it got me because the water was always cold, and it didn't at all.
Yeah,
it was just a pain in the ass getting it off my hands. Then I was like, well, now I can't. The stroke was terrible with the Vaseline in your hands.
Yeah,
but so I think that's maybe an over. I guess I never really thought about that, but that might be an overlooked value. If you want to get acclimated to cold water, join the swim team.
Absolutely, man. I tell you what, it's hard to I'm an early morning workout guy, and in that pool, first thing in the morning is
it's still.
I was sitting on the pool deck this morning thinking, you know what, I really don't want to get in there right now.
Yeah. But once you get in, I think that's something about the medium of water is that once you get in, you're just kind of like,
you're in now. Yeah.
Let's just go for it. It's just easier to keep moving.
So I think that's an invaluable quality that you get from being a swimming athlete, and the endurance that comes with it. The body composition that comes with it. You're a pretty lean guy usually, and you can put on muscle mass pretty early, pretty quickly. So any strength training program, you'll see big progress in, which you definitely need prior to BUD/S. Strength and running is going to be your weakness. Which will take you into all the elements of BUD/S. Will help you with rucking. It'll help you with running in sand. It'll help you with the obstacle courses. All of those things kind of come in together, with a strength training program.
Yeah.
Right. I guess some other intangibles that we talked about in this BUD/S prep qualities series is teamwork. You're even though it's an individual sport, besides the relays and swimming. You really do suffer together. There's something about swim team guys being pretty good teammates, because you are waking up early and you're, making a special effort and things suck and you're getting through it. And, you got that little bonding time in the locker room where, you talk about how much that sucked and,
so because typically the locker room's always really warm too, or it's really cold sometimes. But I think that's, and I'll throw the community under the bus a little bit, not the SEAL community, but the swim community. Swimmers are weird, man. We were super weird. Like I wasn't that far into the spectrum of weird. I think to some, I don't know what. Maybe it's just being like 3/4 naked your entire childhood. I don't know. Yeah. Like I always thought about that. I was like, well, because swimmers are always shaving their body when they don't even have hair. They're always dying because you don't have a uniform necessarily. So people are always getting weird haircuts or dyeing their hair. Or swimmers are the first group of athletes that I knew were getting tattoos.
Yeah.
Not that again, I'm not by no means am I judging people with tattoos. Yeah. I just think that it's such an interesting, every sport has their subculture.
Yeah, sure.
I just find swimmers and soccer players to be the weirdest, in my opinion. Soccer players I don't know why. I don't know why. But anyway.
Like I said, I think they make pretty good team players.
Yeah.
Being an individual athlete, very similar to wrestlers. They're very, even though they're individual athletes, they make good team players as well.
Yeah.
Just because you're constantly working together, you're wrestling each other, and
you struggle together because especially geographically where, unless you're like in Southern California where water polo and swimming, or like you're in Arizona and Tucson, or you're in Southern Florida where like, and also swimming, what a weird thing. It's a winter sport.
Yeah.
The sport itself is during the winter time. And so you're kind of like, you don't have much of an audience.
No.
So you bond like there isn't very many places other than like the Olympics or certain international competitions. Like you go to Texas on a Friday night, there's 3 to 5 or 10,000 people in the stands.
Right.
You go to a swim meet in Texas, you're going to get maybe 100. Yeah. So it's like, but now it's the most watched event in the Olympics other than track and field, I believe.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Everybody loves it. So
it's a prime time event. Right. And probably because we're just so good at it as well. But anyway, So I think that maybe that's why swimming also is really good at being team players, because they struggle together.
Yeah, I think that has an element to it, definitely. Now I will say this, I think a good quality of a Bud student is being able to handle negative feedback. And because you're always in that water, you may not get negative feedback during your performance time, from coaches. You're going to hear it at the end of a lap or at the end of practice or things like that. But you rarely get constant negative feedback during your physical activity. Like I say, I'm not calling it a weakness, just calling it, sometimes it's hard to handle if you're not used to it, especially in the middle.
It's hard to make corrections in swimming in the act.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And so I thought like there was the most recent Rio Olympics, there was an Under Armour commercial with Michael Phelps. It was pretty gritty. And it was the film company is actually from Virginia Beach called Ironclad. And they're the ones that did all the filming. They didn't do the editing, but they did all the filming. And they were just like, some people had an idea what they wanted. Cause I talked to the guys, cause I've done they shoot the videos for the SEAL Foundation and the boot campaign and stuff, and good dudes. Anyway, so they were like Under Armour and like whoever had an idea, they wanted it like this kind of sexy thing. And they're like, they talked to Michael, and Michael was like, man, like my work isn't sexy at all. I just bust my ass. So they basically just followed around to his meals and his bedtime and stuff. And it was just like, this is raw.
Yeah.
And that's what it ended up becoming. It was just a bunch of raw training footage. And that's what I mean. That when I watched it, I was like, oh, like it just gave me because I was like, that's swimming, man. You wake up early. You don't have an audience. I mean, I guess it's like that in a lot of sports.
Right.
And that's where it's like all the hard work that goes. And that's where Stu and I are I love it. You either love the journey.
Yeah.
Or you don't. And that's very, 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 very true with Buds, and very, 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 very true with the SEAL community. You either love the journey and the grind and the training and the thanklessness of it. Like that was a draw to me because I'm introverted. I like the idea of nobody knowing what the hell I was doing every day. Yeah. I was working my ass off in a kill house or doing helo ops or skydiving all through the night. No one knew what we were doing. That to me was a big draw to me. And you either love that or you don't. And that's where like my gym, my home gym, no one trains with me. I love the solitary nature of it. Yeah. But now what I do really enjoy probably more than that is coaching and teaching groups. It's funny for some, like I really, really love being in front of a group of people, athletes, and training them. That's my favorite thing.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, so I think that's all the, good qualities of the Bud student coming from the swimming background. You have anything to add on that back end?
No, I think we've pretty much covered what probably is worth covering aside from just kind of see stories and swim stories and stuff. But
now I will say this, I think we should do a new segment in every one of these podcasts, and we're going to call this the stupid question of the week.
Yep.
Right. And we'll keep it swimming related since we're talking about swimmers. So I was recently asked, let's see, what was it? Do you have any good suggestions to become a better swimmer? Right. That was the question that was asked. And I said, yes, take swim lessons. Right. I wasn't trying to be a smart ass. It came across as being a smart ass, but I answered his question. Right.
Yeah.
And then he gets a little, he's like, no, I meant better lung capacity, better, swimming for speed, all this stuff, type of workouts. And I answered, then you should have asked that. Right?
Yes, you should have.
I don't have my mind reading baseball cap on to understand what you're asking. So my thing for you is, this isn't a stupid question, but it could be worded better, and it could be a little more specific to what you really want. Yeah. Because I don't know who you are, and I don't know what you're really needing.
Yeah. So I like, that's what Stu and I have said, and we've talked about a lot, is here's the deal, is that for Stu and I to help you the best way we can from a satellite position is we have to, number one, get details, but number two, you have to understand your own details. Like if someone goes, hey, I want to get stronger. And you go, okay, well, do a strength program. Well, no, that I don't want a back squat. That'll make me big and bulky. Like, no, like you got to understand there's definitions to each of these things. But so I guess to my point is also, and Stu and I have talked about off camera, is that we will really help you be as specific as you need to be, but you have to come to the table with as much specifics as you have. Right. Be specific, because what ends up happening is typically it really becomes a very short conversation of go, hey, do this, try this, read this. Right. Watch this. That's it. Yeah. And then you go, ooh.
Yeah. If the question had been, hey, I'm a 10-minute 500-yard swimmer, I'm trying to break 9, what do you recommend?
Yeah. And my currently all I'm doing is like, my first question is going to be, well, what does your current routine look like? Right. And it'll be like, well, I'm just, I'm getting in the pool, I'm swimming 800s, 500s. So I go, well, if you're not doing some speed intervals occasionally, okay, if you're not changing up your stroke a little bit, you might want to try to change that. You might do a swim, just spend the week swimming in fins. Yeah. The kind of thing. Like oftentimes kind of what Stu and I have talked about, and I say all the time, is that if you're getting stagnant, if you're getting stagnant in your particular training mode that you're in, sometimes all it takes is a little bit of a change.
Yes, absolutely.
Right? Yeah. And it's not a big sweeping. When I say change, when we say change, we're not saying scrap what you've done to get to this point. Like that's still your base.
Another element to it.
Just little tweaks. Yeah. Okay. So
and it could also be technique issue. You could not be gliding enough, or you could be gliding too far and losing all your momentum. You might not be taking full advantage of the walls and building up your momentum, whenever you kick off. So there's a lot of little things. Probably the best way to do it is take a 50-meter video. Have somebody walk along the pool deck while you're swimming, holding their phone sideways so I can see the whole thing, landscape version, and just send it. Send it and tell me, say, this is what I did, 50 meters. It takes me less than a minute to look at it and say, here's what you're doing wrong. Yep. I'm happy to do that.
Yeah. So, and for free.
And for free.
So anyway, so I think that's just, we're trying to, again, we're encouraging you to send the questions, but if we can learn from one another and go, okay, I don't want to be that guy, be thorough, but because we are going to end each one of these segments with a stupid question.
Yes. Yeah. But we like stupid questions. I mean, like I said, it was hardly a stupid question, and I wouldn't even call it a stupid question, but it could have just been worded better. So therefore it got categorized as a stupid question because I gave a stupid answer. Yeah. Right? Yeah. I gave a stupid answer of like, take swim lessons. That is one way.
It's Newton's law, equal and opposite reaction.
That is one way to get better at swimming. And I answered your question.
Yeah.
So
and that's
trying to be a smart ass.
It's the same idea of like, again, I'll close. This is my closing statement, is that Stu and I, again, we're joking about it off camera, is that now probably a good time might be to think about it now, but if you end up in the SEAL teams or end up in the Special Forces community in any capacity, and you become a senior leader or a commissioned officer, you are going to really, 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 really be forced to be concise in your communication, both written and in text or in verbal.
Yeah.
Like it is no joke, the actual level of not education, but as the eloquence that is necessary to communicate at the highest possible. Because the deal is, as Special Forces communities, their chain of command is much, 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 much smaller and direct to senior like we're talking congressional and generals and admirals. It's my chain of command, like from literally from me as a person, as a senior team leader, assistant team leader to command, to the President of the United States. I was separated only by so I had my team leader, then my troop chief, then the master chief, then the troop commander, right? And then I had the DCO, the CO of the command. Then I had JSOC direct, and then I had the joint chiefs, and then the presidents. So that's pretty small chain of command, really.
Yeah.
Right. And now if you're like an E3 grunt, and no disrespect to that terminology,
yeah, you got to start somewhere.
To the Marine Corps,
got to start somewhere.
That chain of command is almost infinite.
Yeah. It's
so my point is that I guess I, as an E6, briefed generals and admirals.
Yeah.
I've been on the Hill briefing congressmen, specifically on human performance. So as an E6 in a suit, I was briefing congressmen and senators. Yeah. You're going to have to learn how to communicate, folks.
Yeah.
You just better start now.
And this is not even operational communication we're talking about. We're talking about just administrative communication. Yes. And then think about the operational communication skills that need to take place. I mean, you cannot have gray area in your communication, whether it is written or verbal, in operational speak.
Somebody will get killed, hurt, ruined. Like, it's just a bad idea. So we're talking just as simple as like writing a brief, a PowerPoint on the operational capacity of your unit.
Yes. So I know we may sound like English teachers to you sometimes when I send back a paragraph with no punctuation and say, punctuate this for me and I'll answer it.
Yeah.
But there's a reason for it.
Stu has more patience than I. I'm working on mine because I had a question the other day. It's like question, and it was like 3 paragraphs. At no point was there even a question mark or a question within it.
Yeah.
So I didn't answer.
Yeah. If I don't see a question mark, that makes it really tough for me to find the question.
Yeah. Yeah. So anyways, enough of my soapbox speech for the day, but.
Yeah.
I think probably the next one we'll do maybe is the strength athlete. Or
I think that's
maybe
a big
we'll
one.
go down the road of the triathlete. But I think you kind of get the idea with triathlete probably. But we'll talk about the big strong guy next maybe.
Yeah, I'd like to hit all of them. I'd like to hit kids in the band that want to be SEALs. I don't care.
Yeah.
Whatever your background is, we have all types that come into the community.
Yeah.
And
sedentary individual.
I mean, we had a kid that's well through buds right now and never played a sport in high school, but he was a roller skate. He did skateboarding, was a skate
that's
rat.
Crazy. Like, I think of guys now to come to think of it, man, skateboarders are resilient. Cause like Andy Urabito, who owns Half Face Blades, like he was a skater kid and he crushed buds. I'm talking like, as far as a physical performer across the board, Andy he wasn't the fastest swimmer, but he was top 3 runner, top 3 O course, top 15 swimmers, but just
think how many times those guys get hurt, how many they play with pain. And that's a lot what we're going to talk about the next week with the strength athlete, because they're typically football players, lacrosse players, those type of guys that actually lift a lot of weights and then get big and then go do their sport and then play hurt and play with pain, and they know what that is. That's a big skill too. So we'll continue that one on next. I think that'll be a good one for us to do. Let's hit the strength guy. So
Looking forward to it.
Jeff, as always, thank you very much.
Always.
We'll see you.